Welcome to the Deep Dive. In a world that feels like it's just moving faster and faster every single day, especially in tech, keeping pace with all the innovation, the new policies, these ethical debates, it can feel like a whole job in itself.
Oh, absolutely. The sheer volume of information, right? It's just
Yeah.
constant.
Exactly. So how do you stay not just, informed, but really plugged in without just drowning in it all?
Well, that's pretty much the challenge we try to tackle with every deep dive, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Think of this as your curated intelligence brief. It's like a shortcut, precision-guided to understanding the really crucial stuff shaping things right now.
Okay.
And this particular dive, it's custom-tailored for you, our listener.
Yeah.
We've pulled these sources because they really caught the eye of the Pythonist programmer. She's a software engineering consultant. And honestly, she has this incredible knack for spotting the real nuggets of knowledge in the noise.
Okay. Good source curation.
Definitely. So we've taken her reads from just this past week, June 20th to the 27th, 2025, and we've tried to boil them down to their essence for you.
Fantastic. Yeah, our mission today is basically to cut through all that background noise and, deliver those essential insights, make them stick.
Right.
We're going to journey from the absolutely massive physical infrastructure behind AI and the complex legal fights over its very foundation, all the way to the really nuanced stuff like digital safety, ethical data use.
And then we'll pivot, right? Look at how global politics are changing brand strategies.
Yeah, advertising, corporate values, all of that.
And then dive into the really personal side, human experiences in this tech world, the unspoken griefs, the weird public personas, and the real practical challenges like software development, digital governance.
It's a lot to cover. It's going to be wide-ranging, definitely eye-opening. I think we are absolutely ready to dive in. Okay, let's start unpacking this really fascinating intersection. AI and the law is huge right now. And we're going straight to a landmark ruling that just landed. The Bartz v. Anthropic case, decided June 24th, 2025. This one is, it's a monumental deal.
It really is, because Anthropic, the big AI startup, they actually scored a pretty major victory on this incredibly contentious issue of fair use.
Right, the fair use argument for training AI models.
Exactly. And what's really striking is the Judge William Alsup. He's known, right? He handled Google v. Oracle, other big tech copyright cases.
Okay, so he knows this space.
He does. And in this ruling, he stated, point blank, the training use was a fair use. But he didn't just leave it there. He called the technology itself among the most transformative many of us will see in our lifetimes.
Wow. That's a powerful statement from a judge, not just legal jargon.
No, it's almost philosophical, isn't
Yeah.
it? It's a real endorsement of AI's learning process.
Transformative, that's the key word, I think.
Yeah.
The core of the fair use argument, as Alsup saw it, is that AI training isn't just, substituting for the original work.
Right. It's creating something new,
Yeah.
something different.
Exactly. Chris Mammon, an IP lawyer, really highlighted this. He pointed out that Alsup specifically rejected the argument that what humans do when reading and memorizing is different in kind from what computers do when training an LLM.
That's profound. It's legally equating the AI's learning process to human learning.
Yeah. For AI developers, that must feel like a huge win, like a validation that their algorithms are doing something genuinely distinct.
It is, but think about the deeper implications, If a court says AI learns like humans, does that change how we think about creativity, originality?
Good point. Authorship, IP.
Exactly. It blurs the lines, doesn't it, between machine creation and human creation. We're only just starting to grapple with that. It's unsettling in a way.
Totally. And yet, this big win for Anthropic, it comes with this massive, gigantic asterisk. You just can't ignore it.
Right. The piracy issue.
Yes. While the court said the training itself was fair use, it also ruled the authors can still sue Anthropic over pirated books. And we're not talking a few books here.
No, it's, over 7 million?
Over 7 million pirated books, downloaded from places like Books3, LibGen, Pirate Library, Mirror, you name it.
Before they switched to buying legitimate copies. That's the key part.
Exactly. So the method of getting the data versus the act of training on it, very different things in the eyes of the court.
So it's like the court saying, yeah, okay, training AI on copyrighted stuff can be fair use because the result is transformative, but you absolutely cannot just rip off the source material to do it.
Which leads to this massive financial risk. Right?
Oh, huge.
Right.
Minimum statutory damage is $750 per copyrighted work infringed.
Per book.
Per book. Multiply that by 7 million. You're talking potential penalties easily in the billions of dollars.
Billions. That's
Yeah.
staggering, even for a well-funded AI company.
Absolutely. And this ruling, it's going to echo, right? It'll influence dozens of other AI copyright suits that are in the pipeline.
Especially the ones where piracy isn't the issue.
Exactly. It gives those companies a strong precedent to argue fair use if they source their data legally. It's a big contrast to, say, the Thomson Reuters v. Ross case, where the judge ruled against fair use.
Right. So folks like Adam Eisgrau at the Chamber of Progress, the tech trade group, they're celebrating this, saying it promotes competition, creativity.
Right. He said, ALSIP affirmed that the purpose of copyright is to promote competition and creativity, not protect monopoly revenue streams. That's their take.
But, and it's a crucial but.
It's a huge but. The judge himself hammered this point home. Piracy is not excused. He explicitly said every factor points against fair use when talking about those downloaded pirated copies.
So the line is clear. Train transformatively, fine. Steal the data to do it, not fine.
Exactly. And this isn't just about big tech, right? This affects the very foundation of AI learning, the ethics around it.
Yeah. For you listening, this case raises big questions like how will this impact creative works? Availability, cost.
And what does it mean if you're a creator? Could your work be used to train AI? It's this complex ethical tightrope, and the law is playing catch-up with the tech.
It really is. Okay, so from these complex legal fights over how AI gets its data, it feels like a natural next step to look at the sheer, almost unbelievable physical scale needed to actually run these systems.
Yeah, the nuts and bolts, the concrete and steel behind the code.
Speaking of scale, let's talk Amazon. Because when you think AI, you probably picture, code, algorithms, digital stuff.
Yeah, abstract concept.
But behind it all, there's this massive, physical footprint being built right now, changing the landscape. We're talking Amazon's Project Rainier in Indiana.
Yeah, 1,200 acres. Used to be a cornfield.
Gone, replaced by data centers.
And the scale is wild. 7 data centers already built, each one bigger than a football stadium.
7 already.
Yeah.
And plans for.
Plans for around 30. On that one site, Amazon calls it one giant machine intended just for artificial intelligence.
One giant machine. Wow. And interestingly, linking back to our last topic, a primary customer for this huge build-out.
Anthropic, the company we were just talking about. Amazon's invested, what, something like $8 billion in them?
$8 billion. So this massive infrastructure investment is directly tied to that AI relationship. It's very targeted.
Definitely. And it shows the intense demand for this kind of hardware, especially after ChatGPT really took off.
And the resource consumption, it's mind-boggling. This one facility, Project Rainier, needs 2.2 gigawatts of electricity.
Enough for 1 million homes.
1 million homes. And millions of gallons of water every year, mostly just for cooling the chips.
Yeah, it's this huge physical cost to the AI race, consuming resources like crazy.
And Amazon isn't alone in this, right? This is an industry thing now.
Oh, yeah. It's a race. Meta's building a 2-gigawatt facility in Louisiana. OpenAI's got 1.2 gigawatts going up in Texas, another big one in the UAE.
All post-ChatGPT boom construction.
Exactly. Amazon's even designing its own chips for this Inferentia and the new Trainium, too. They worked with Anthropic engineers on those.
So custom silicon. Are they trying to beat NVIDIA?
Not necessarily head-to-head per chip. Their strategy seems to be packing more slightly simpler chips into each center, going for volume, efficiency, maybe cost-effectiveness.
Interesting strategy. But these huge projects, they land in communities. And that causes friction, right?
Absolutely. Indiana gave Amazon huge tax breaks, potentially $4 billion in sales tax breaks over 50 years, another $4 billion in local property, and tech tax breaks.
Wow. Huge incentives.
But the locals, they're pushing back. Concerns about water usage dewatering, neighbors' wells running dry, increased traffic, noise.
Even though Amazon's paying for road upgrades.
Yeah, but the disruption is real. And then there's the plan to build on a 10-acre wetland. That's hugely controversial.
A wetland, yeah, that's not great.
And imagine living near a site that, according to the power company AEP, is going to more than double the state's peak power demand by 2030.
Double it.
And Amazon's campus accounts for half of that increase, mostly powered by natural gas plants. That's a massive local environmental shift.
It's just a stark reminder, isn't it? AI feels abstract, digital, but it has this incredibly real, physical, sometimes disruptive impact.
Totally. And Prasad Kayanaraman, an Amazon VP, he mentioned these clusters are built for training now, but they could also deliver AI models later.
So they're flexible, hedging their bets a bit.
Seems like it. If training gets more efficient or hits some kind of limit, the infrastructure isn't wasted. It can pivot.
So for you listening, When you interact with an AI, ask a chatbot something, generate an image. You're plugging into this vast, hidden physical world.
Right. Concrete, water, massive electricity use, reshaping landscapes, local lives.
It really makes you ask, what responsibilities do these tech giants have to the
It-
places they build these things? How do you balance progress and local impact?
It's a huge question. And if AI needs all this data and these physical spaces, the next logical step is, how do we make sure that data is used ethically, openly, respecting creators?
Well, that brings us nicely to this next development, actually. It's from Creative Commons, the nonprofit that's been all about open licensing for creators for ages.
Yeah, the CC licenses,
Hmm?
very familiar.
Right. Well, on June 25th, they debuted something totally new called CC Signals. It's a framework specifically designed to build what they're calling an open AI ecosystem.
Okay, CC signals, unpack that for us. How does it differ from the regular licenses?
So the core idea is to let dataset holders, anyone with a collection of data or content, specify how machines can reuse their stuff, especially for AI training.
Ah, okay, so it's machine-readable permissions, basically.
Exactly. It's trying to find that balance,
Yeah.
keep the internet open, which CC has always championed, but deal with AI's huge appetite for data
Right.
without everything getting locked behind paywalls or just scraped without permission,
Hmm.
preventing that data walling off, as they put it.
Precisely. Anna Tumadotier, the CEO of Creative Commons, she put it really well. She said, just as the CC licenses helped build the open web, we believe CC signals will help shape an open AI ecosystem grounded in reciprocity.
Reciprocity. That's a good word for it. Because right now it feels like a free-for-all, doesn't it?
Totally. Companies are doing all sorts of fragmented things.
Yeah.
X, Twitter allowed AI training, then reversed it. Reddit uses robots.txt to try and block bots.
Cloudflare was talking about charging AI bots.
Right. And open source devs are building tools just to slow down crawlers. It's chaotic.
The Wild West, basically.
Pretty much. So CC Signals aims to be more holistic, a framework with legal and technical structure plus ethical weight, like the existing licenses people trust.
Makes sense. Build on what works. Is it ready to use now?
It's still early days. They've published initial designs. They're looking for public feedback right now from developers, creators, everyone.
Okay.
And the plan is for an alpha launch in November 2025.
So, soon-ish. This feels important. For you as a creator or just someone with stuff online, this could give you way more control over how your digital footprint gets used by AI.
It feels like a really vital step towards a more ethical, more transparent AI future, making sure the open web isn't just, consumed without consent or benefit flowing back.
Giving power back to individuals. I like that.
Yeah. So from the ethics of data use and the infrastructure behind it, let's maybe pivot now to the human relationship with technology. Our internal worlds, public personas, how does it all intersect?
Okay, our next deep dive really gets into a profoundly human experience. One that I think resonates way beyond just specific diagnoses. We're looking at This Is My Life, Ambiguous Grief in Neurocomplex Adulthood by Lindsay Macrith, published June 25th.
Yeah, this piece introduces a really important term, neurocomplexity.
Right, it's trying to move past that simple neurotypical neurodivergent split.
Exactly. It embraces the more nuanced, complex reality for people whose brains just don't fit neatly into those boxes. Cognitive, sensory, emotional experiences that are more layered.
And the core concept she explores is ambiguous grief. Can you unpack that a bit? How's it different from regular grief?
Sure. So traditional grief, right. It's usually a response to a clear loss, a death, a divorce. It's painful, but it's definable, finite in a way.
Okay.
Ambiguous grief is different. It's persistent, it's layered, often invisible. It's this kind of quiet, ongoing mourning for losses that are unclear, hard to define, maybe don't have a neat beginning or end.
Okay, so less defined.
Yeah. And for neurocomplex adults, the article argues this isn't just an occasional thing. It's like woven into their daily lives, a continuous condition.
And the article talks about invisible losses, right?
Yeah.
Things that neurocomplex adults experience that others just don't see.
Exactly. Think about missed opportunities because of sensory overload, social events, career steps, even just daily things you can't participate in.
Right. Or constant misunderstandings leading to isolation, the sheer exhaustion of just navigating a world not built for you.
Precisely. And the killer is society often doesn't validate these losses. So you end up grieving alone, which just compounds it.
That sounds incredibly isolating.
It is. And the article makes a really crucial distinction between this grief and shame. Grief mourns the loss. Shame attacks you, makes you feel flawed.
So reframing it as grief is actually an act of self-acceptance.
Totally. It's radical in a way. It
Yeah.
validates the struggle without blaming the self.
And this idea extends to identity too, right? Fluid and shifting identities.
Yeah. For many neurocomplex folks, identity isn't fixed. It's evolving, maybe contradictory. So ambiguous grief can come from mourning identities that were imposed on you or ones you internalize that just don't fit anymore.
Like letting go of the idea you have to be one single coherent thing.
Exactly. Embracing the multiplicity, the change,
Hmm.
which society often pushes back against, right? Society likes neat boxes. Shame often tries to punish that fluidity.
Then there's the futures never realized. Grief. That sounds heavy.
It is. It's mourning those standard life scripts, the career path, marriage, kids that are often built for a neurotypical ideal. They might feel inaccessible or even harmful.
So grieving the life you thought you were supposed to have.
Yeah, grieving those imagined possibilities.
Yeah.
But it can also be creative, right? Leading you to build alternative futures that actually do work for you, honoring your own needs and rhythms.
Building a life on your own terms. Okay.
And finally, there's the grief of burnout, which isn't just being tired.
No, it sounds much deeper.
It is. It's a profound loss, energy, motivation, cognitive ability from chronic overload, executive dysfunction, social demands. It's mourning the self that could push through, but it's also a signal.
A signal for what?
A signal demanding rest, deep rest, recalibration, radical self-care. The grief is telling you something important.
Wow. This framework, it feels powerful. Not just for understanding neurocomplexity, but maybe for how all of us process unspoken disappointments, pressures, identity shifts.
Absolutely. In a world that demands conformity, it makes you wonder, right? Have you experienced similar invisible losses or shifts in your own life that maybe you struggled to put a name to?
Yeah, that's a really potent question for reflection. Okay, so if our internal lives are this complex, what about the public personas?
Mm-hmm.
Especially of those shaping our tech world. Sometimes those personas seem quite constructed.
Yeah.
Which brings us to our next piece. And this one feels almost like, I don't know, performance art. It's Elon Musk's lawyers claim he does not use a computer from June 23rd.
Yeah, I saw that headline. It's
Yeah.
pretty wild.
For anyone who follows tech or just exists online, it sounds absolutely bananas. The claim made in a formal court filing for his lawsuit against Sam Altman and OpenAI is literally that. Elon Musk does not use a computer.
Wow, the sheer audacity.
Yeah.
Given his incredibly active online presence running multiple tech companies, is just astounding.
Right. And what's fascinating is the immediate stark contrast between this legal statement and, well, reality, the public evidence.
Oh, yeah. Just in the last year, he's posted pictures of laptops, talked about using them.
Exactly. December 2024, he posts a pic on X. Says,
Yeah.
there's a pic of my laptop testing Starlink streaming.
Mm-hmm.
May 2025, he tweets, he's still using my ancient PC laptop with the @DOGE sticker.
An ancient PC laptop he apparently doesn't use.
Okay, and remember, February 2024,
Uh-huh.
he complained on X he just bought a new PC laptop, but couldn't use it without a Microsoft account because he was worried about their AI getting access.
Right. So he's buying new laptops he doesn't use and worrying about AI access on the computers he doesn't use. Makes perfect sense.
It's almost comical.
Mm.
And the evidence goes back further. November 2022, during the Twitter takeover chaos, he posted, then deleted, a picture of a computer screen showing Mastodon.
Ah, yes, the brief Mastodon flirtation on a screen he wasn't using.
And way back in July 2021, he explicitly tweeted he uses a PC desktop with latest graphics card, although I have a Mac 2 gigabyte laptop.
So multiple computers he doesn't use.
Got it. Plus, there was that photo from the All In podcast video showing a gaming PC in his DC office.
Right, in the Eisenhower Executive Office building, a place famously devoid of computers, apparently.
And ex-employees have reportedly said, yeah, he mostly uses his phone, but he definitely uses the laptop sometimes.
So the legal claim is just demonstrably false, based on public information.
Pretty much seems that way. So for you listening, this isn't just about Elon and his gadgets, amusing as it is. It really highlights this bizarre disconnect between carefully crafted legal narratives and, well, reality as documented online.
Yeah. What does it tell you about how information gets spun in high-stakes legal fights, especially with these huge tech figures?
Makes you question everything, right? Truth, intentional misdirection in legal filings, PR.
It really does. Okay, so from individual tech figures and their interesting public personas, let's maybe zoom out. Let's look at how broader political currents are shaping corporate behavior and public image on a much bigger scale, affecting brands you see every day.
All right, our next deep dive is the era of woke brand activism is over. Came out June 27th. And it tracks this really significant kind of rapid shift in how companies are behaving, how they're marketing.
Yeah, for years, maybe the last decade or so, we saw more and more brands jumping on social justice bandwagons, right? Pride, Black Lives Matter.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes called pink washing or rainbow washing if it felt superficial.
Exactly. Like that Gillette ad in 2019 with the trans man learning to shave, that got a ton of attention, both positive and negative.
Right, but according to this article, that whole era, it seems to be pretty much over, or at least significantly dialed back.
Yeah, the article cites a poll from Gravity Research. It found 39% of corporations plan to reduce their Pride Month stuff in 2025.
Reduced by almost 40%. Wow. And how many plan to increase?
0. None plan to increase.
0. Okay, that's a dramatic shift. What's driving it?
The article directly points to Donald Trump's second term and his administration's executive orders targeting DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and LGBT rights. That political pressure is causing a widespread pullback, not just from Pride, but even Juneteenth celebrations.
And we're seeing actual examples of this retreat.
Oh, yeah, very visible ones.
Yeah.
MasterCard, which used to have really prominent Pride campaigns, quietly pulled out as a top sponsor of NYC Pride this year.
Quietly. Oh.
And they weren't alone. PepsiCo, Nissan, Citi, PwC also pulled back major sponsorships.
And Target. They had that big backlash over Pride merch a couple years ago.
Right. So this year, they released this really scaled-back, beige-heavy line for Pride, got absolutely roasted online for looking timid and, well, beige.
Beige Pride. Doesn't quite capture the spirit, does it?
Not really. And Mark, a creative director, quoted in the piece, he talks about this void of silence where social justice talk used to be. He said, a lot of these things that brands do are performative, which kind of echoes that earlier woke-washing critique.
So the performance is ending because the political climate changed.
Seems to be a big part of it. The article frames it as corporations facing this tough ethical dilemma, either go MAGA or go moral and risk either conservative boycotts or political retribution.
And that Bud Light boycott in 2023, that must loom large.
Absolutely. Reportedly cost Anheuser-Busch $1.4 billion. Wrecked their market share. That's seen as the turning point, the big financial lesson that signaled the end of widespread corporate DEI and activism, showed the real financial risk.
But it's not universal, right? Some brands are holding the line.
Interestingly, yes, Costco is highlighted as a huge retailer refusing to roll back DEI despite pressure. Walmart heiress Christy Walton is promoting anti-Trump protests, and then you have brands like Ben & Jerry's, ELF Cosmetics, Delta, Cisco, Levi's, Apple, Salesforce, JP Morgan, Microsoft, Goldman Sachs, all apparently defying the anti-woke pressure to some degree.
So it's not a total retreat across the board. There's still some defiance.
Yeah, it suggests that while a tide has turned, not everyone's going with it. And the article also touches on the role of social media platforms Meta, X, and leaders like Zuckerberg and Musk, who sometimes seem to pander to political figures, amplifying certain messages.
Right. So for you listening, this isn't just corporate PR. It's about how real political pressure changes the cultural messages you see every day.
Yeah.
It's reshaping the public square.
Definitely. And as a consumer, how do you navigate that? What do you think brands should do? Stick to selling stuff? Or take a stand, even if it costs them? It's a huge question now, where corporate values are so scrutinized, so weaponized.
It really is. Okay, from these big shifts in brand image and politics, let's look at how another very well-known brand is expanding physically, but with a seemingly laser focus on profitability and product. All right, shifting gears again. Our next deep dive zooms in on modern retail and brand building. It's called Exclusive, Skims' Plan for Global Domination, published June 23rd.
Ah, Skims, Kim Kardashian's brand. They're everywhere lately.
They really are. And this article unpacks their incredibly aggressive, but also seemingly very smart global retail expansion plan.
Aggressive is right. What's the core vision?
The CEO, Jens Greed, literally says he wants to create the Apple stores of apparel.
Okay, that's ambitious, like sleek, high-performing retail spaces.
Exactly. And they're putting their money where their mouth is. This year alone, 16 new U.S. stores, bringing the total to 22 domestically.
16 new ones this year. Wow.
Plus 5 in Mexico, a flagship in London, and plans for Dubai. They're going global fast.
And the article stresses these stores aren't just for show, right? They're meant to drive serious sales.
Yeah, that's a key point. They're described as powerhouses of productivity, not just visual billboards. Unlike a lot of fashion startups where the store's mostly marketing, Skims wants the stores to be profit centers.
Makes sense. So what's behind this success beyond just Kim K's fame?
The article points to a few key things. First, inclusivity. Really wide range of sizes, lots of skin tones. That resonates hugely with people who feel ignored by other brands.
Okay, inclusivity is core. What else?
Innovation. They have these fabric franchises like Fits Everybody and Soft Lounge that have become almost cult hits. People love the actual product.
So quality and specific product lines people seek out.
Right. And linked to that, what they call relentless product perfection, a real focus on quality, fit. It's not just hype. The product itself seems to deliver, driving loyalty.
Got it. Product, inclusivity, quality. What about marketing beyond Kim herself?
Their marketing is incredibly savvy. They have this uncanny ability to capitalize on major cultural moments.
Like what? Give me examples.
Okay, using NBA star Nick Bosa for their menswear launch, tapping the White Lotus actors right after season 2 blew up,
Ah, smart timing.
collaborating with Team USA for the Olympics, featuring K-pop icon Rosé for Valentine's Day. It's about aligning with the current cultural buzz, consistently and authentically. Broadens their appeal way beyond the initial fan base.
Meeting the moment. Very clever. And is it working financially?
Big time. The brand is profitable, projected to hit $1 billion in annual sales.
$1 billion. For shapewear and loungewear, that's huge.
It's massive. And they're expanding wholesale too. Globus in Switzerland, Harvey Nichols in Scotland, Bayman in Turkey, Luisa Roma in Italy, high-end partners.
So multi-channel approach. Stores, online, wholesale.
Exactly. And they see the physical stores as additive to the other channels. They actually increase customer acquisition rates in markets where they open. It all works together.
Very strategic. Any hints about what's next?
Yeah, there's talk of a potential activewear collaboration with Nike, which could be enormous. And an IPO is apparently in the cards. But the CEO says there's no urgency. They're building for the long haul.
Interesting. So for you listening, the Skim story is kind of a masterclass in modern brand building, isn't it?
Totally. It blends celebrity smarts, real product quality, genuine inclusivity, and this really integrated retail strategy, physical and digital working together.
Yeah. What can you take away from their approach for your own work, your own brand, whatever you're building?
Yeah?
How they handle stewardship, visibility, lots to learn there.
Yeah. Definitely food for thought. Okay, from the strategic expansion of a massive brand, let's pivot to something much darker. The hidden industrial scale of financial crime online. Our next topic is pretty chilling, actually. It highlights a really nasty reality of the digital finance world, how foreign scammers use U.S. banks to fleece Americans, published June 25th.
Yeah, this gets into those pig butchering scams. The name itself is just awful.
It is, and it comes from the method, right? They fatten victims up first.
Exactly. Build trust, show fake investment gains, make people feel comfortable putting in more and more money.
And then they butcher them, take everything, wipe out savings.
It's incredibly cruel, and this isn't petty theft. We're talking sophisticated Asian crime syndicates, pulling in $44 billion a year globally.
$44 billion, that's industrial scale.
It is. Millions of victims worldwide, and often run from these horrible prison-like compounds in places like Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, using forced labor.
Just brutal. And the really disturbing part for people in the U.S. is how American banks get pulled into this, often without even knowing it.
Yeah, they play this crucial, almost essential role in the money laundering. The scammers exploit weaknesses in the U.S. system. They use rented U.S. bank accounts. They call them motorcades.
Motorcades, like fast-moving, disposable accounts.
Exactly. They don't own them. They rent temporary access, often just for a short time, to receive the stolen money from victims. It's a key step to make the money harder to trace.
So the money hits a rented U.S. account, then gets moved out.
Usually converted to crypto, then transferred overseas. Fast. And there's this whole black market on Telegram for renting these accounts. Ads openly offering control of accounts at major banks, PNC, Chase, Citi, Bank of America.
Renting access to legitimate-looking accounts? Wow.
And the article gives this heartbreaking example. Middlesex Truck & Coach, a real business in Boston, their name got stolen, used to open a fake Chase account.
Oh, no.
And that fake account collected hundreds of thousands from fraud victims, including $133,565 from one guy, Kevin.
And Kevin lost even more overall, right?
Yeah, his total loss was $716,000 to a fake crypto trading site. He wired money to shell companies with fake addresses. And the story highlights how victims get so psychologically manipulated, so enthralled to the scammers.
That even when the bank tries to warn them.
Sometimes the victims themselves foil the bank's attempts to help because they're convinced the scammer is legitimate. It's just tragic.
It highlights huge systemic failures, doesn't it? Banks not having great standards for detection, lack of information sharing between banks.
Definitely. Criminals exploit those gaps, the sheer volume. The article mentions one network, KGPay, and an arrest in Verst. Darren Lai pleaded guilty to laundering $73.6 million. Just one guy, one network. Shows the scale.
And how does the U.S. compare to other countries in fighting this?
Not great, according to the article. The UK now makes banks reimburse victims up to £85,000 in some cases. Australia requires banks to share info on suspect accounts. Thailand has a central fraud register.
But the U.S. doesn't have those kinds of comprehensive rules.
Apparently not yet, which makes the U.S. system more vulnerable, a target for these scams.
So for you listening, this isn't some far-off problem. It shows real vulnerabilities in the financial systems you use every day.
Absolutely. It makes you think, what steps can you take to protect yourself? How does knowing about these industrial scams change how you interact online, especially with financial platforms or unsolicited messages?
Need for constant vigilance, critical awareness. It's sobering.
It really is. Okay, from that large-scale digital crime, let's look at a different kind of hidden vulnerability. This one's closer to home for tech folks. The murky side of open source and vendor lock-in.
Okay, our next deep dive is definitely for the developers listening, but I think the implications are broader. It's a piece by Omar Abid called Next.js 15.1 Plus is unusable outside of Vercel, published back on June 11th.
Oof, yeah. That title alone is pretty provocative. Next.js is huge in the React world.
Exactly. And the core claim is that versions 15.1 and higher are basically broken if you're not deploying on Vercel, the company behind Next.js. Specifically how they handle metadata.
Okay, metadata, like page titles, descriptions for search engines, that kind of stuff.
Precisely. And getting that wrong, it could absolutely tank your search rankings, devastate visibility.
So what's the technical change? What did they break?
Well, normally that metadata gets sent right away in the initial HTML file. Simple, fast, easy for search crawlers to see.
Right. Standard practice.
But with Next.js 15.1 plus day, Vercel introduced metadata streaming. Now, that crucial info is sent after the main page loads in a separate stream. And critically, it often needs JavaScript to run on the user's end just to become visible.
Whoa, okay. So it adds delay and requires JavaScript execution. That sounds problematic for crawlers.
Exactly. It's like sending a letter with the important part written in invisible ink that only shows up later under a special light, but the recipient might not have the light or wait around for it.
Not ideal for getting your message across to Google. What's Vercel's reason for doing this?
They say it's for performance optimization, to speed up metadata generation on the server.
But the article pushes back on that.
Pretty hard. It argues metadata is usually tiny, less than 1 KB. Doing separate server trips for it can actually be slower. And needing truly dynamic metadata is often an edge case, not the norm. So the change feels unnecessary, overly complex for most people.
And the SEO impact is the big worry. If crawlers don't run the JavaScript or don't wait.
They just miss the metadata. Poof. Bad for rankings. Vercel did add a workaround, HTML limited bots, to try and skip streaming for crawlers.
But that adds complexity, relies on detecting crawlers, which isn't perfect.
Right, and the article argues this creates this tight coupling to Vercel's own infrastructure. Trying to use open source adapters like OpenX to deploy elsewhere becomes garbage because they need massive reverse engineering now.
So much for open source. It sounds like vendor lock-in dressed up as a feature.
That's definitely the accusation. And get this, even for static site simple, pre-built HTML, the metadata still isn't in the initial HTML head. It still needs JavaScript.
That's absurd. Forcing static servers to detect crawlers just for basic metadata.
Seems that way. And to top it all off, there was a critical security vulnerability, CVE 2025-29927, CVSS score 9.1, found in version 15.1.8.
9.1, that's severe.
Yeah, it was only patched in 15.2.3. So developers face this horrible choice: stay on a vulnerable version to avoid the metadata mess and keep their SEO, or upgrade and potentially break their site's visibility outside Vercel.
What a terrible position to be in. It really highlights that tension, doesn't it? The promise of open source versus the reality of vendor control.
Totally. For you listening, especially if you make tech decisions, it's a real case study. What are the hidden costs of convenience? How do you weigh speed now versus flexibility and true openness later?
Yeah, open doesn't always mean free from strings. A stark reminder.
Definitely. Okay, from vendor lock-in in code, let's explore one last fascinating, maybe slightly bewildering intersection: tech, government, politics, and unique personalities. Our final deep dive today, honestly, it feels like something out of a political satire. The headline is "Big Balls is now at the Social Security Administration," published June 26th.
Wait, Big Balls? Seriously, is that a name?
It's apparently the nickname, or online handle maybe, of Edward Korestein, A 19-year-old tech guy who got some attention working for Elon Musk's, uniquely named, Department of Government Efficiency.
DOGE.
DOGE, right, okay. So, Big Balls from DOGE is now at the Social Security Administration, the SSA.
That's the story. Apparently, he had a brief resignation from DOGE, but then unexpectedly popped back up in government as a special government employee at the SSA.
A special government employee? What's his role supposed to be?
According to an SSA spokesperson, his job is focused on improving the functionality of the Social Security website and advancing our mission of delivering more efficient service to the American people.
Improving the website, okay. Sounds normal enough on the surface, but the background.
The background is where it gets interesting. He's 19, high school grad. Worked at Neuralink briefly, founded something called Tesla, Sexy LLC back in 2021.
Tesla.sexy. Worked for a startup known for hiring black hat hackers. Reportedly got fired from one job for leaking info.
Yeah.
And had zero government experience before DOGE.
That's quite the resume for fixing the website for millions of retirees and disabled people.
Right. And SSA sources confirmed he showed up at HQ along with another DOGE engineer from Exa Neuralink, Era Mogadassi. One employee said Korstein looked nervous, almost embarrassed.
I mean, maybe understandable given the nickname and the scrutiny, but the whole situation sounds odd.
Extremely odd. A law professor quoted in the article called the fact that a White House official apparently didn't even know he'd been rehired abnormal.
You'd think someone would know who's working at the SSA.
You would. But tellingly, the professor added that while abnormal for most administrations, this kind of chaos was normal for this administration.
Oof. That says a lot. So for you listening, this story is just bizarre, but also maybe illuminating. It shows these weird dynamics when tech figures, especially ones with unconventional backgrounds and very public personas, move into government.
Yeah. What does it mean for public services? Agencies that need stability, accountability, when private tech philosophies and people like this start influencing operations.
How do you balance that drive for innovation, for efficiency, which tech often promises, with the absolute need for accountability, proper vetting, public trust, especially in vital agencies like SSA?
It's a really profound question about where public service is heading, isn't it?
Wow. What an incredible range we've covered today in this deep dive. We really kicked things off grappling with those huge foundational AI issues.
The landmark legal fights over fair use, that ethical tightrope of piracy shaping how AI learns.
Right. And then the sheer physical scale, those massive data centers gobbling up land, power, water, just so the AI can run.
Yeah, the hidden infrastructure, then we shifted into the really human side of it all.
Totally. Exploring those invisible losses, the fluid identities, through that lens of ambiguous grief.
Which was such a powerful concept, and contrasting that internal complexity with the sometimes bizarre public personas versus private realities of tech leaders like Musk. Yeah, the doesn't use a computer claim was something else.
It really was. Then we saw how global politics are actively changing brand strategies. That whole anti-woke era, forcing tough choices.
While other brands like Skims are just executing these incredibly focused plans for global retail domination. Different strategies in play.
Definitely. And finally, we hit those darker vulnerabilities. The horrifying scale of pig butchering scams exploiting financial systems.
And that tension in the developer world, open source promises versus vendor lock-in reality, like with the Next.js situation.
Right. And tapped off with that weird story of unconventional tech talent landing in critical government roles, raising all sorts of questions about accountability.
It's so clear how interconnected all this is.
Yeah.
It paints this really complex, fast-moving picture of our tech present and where it's heading.
Absolutely. And as we think about all this, the massive infrastructure for AI, the battles over its data, the human expertise still need... Here's something to chew on.
Okay, lay it on us.
If AI systems get better and better at teaching, explaining, synthesizing knowledge, how does that change your role as a learner in the future?
Good question. If the AI can explain anything.
Right. What new forms of human expertise become the most valuable, the most irreplaceable? When knowledge itself is so easily put together by machines, what's left that's uniquely human?
That is definitely something to ponder. We really hope this deep dive has given you a clearer, more nuanced view of these critical developments.
Yeah, hopefully plenty to think about. Take a moment, reflect on what really stuck with you. Maybe dig deeper into one of these topics if it sparked your interest. #tag episode sources. AI reality check. The better AI gets, the more it needs us. Human at the center. Elon Musk's lawyers claim he does not use a computer. Neurocomplexity and burnout. This is my life. Ambiguous grief and neurocomplex adulthood. Emerging tech real impact. At Amazon's biggest data center, everything is supersized for AI. Next.js 15.1 Plus is unusable outside of Vercel. Digital safety and ethics. Anthropic scores a landmark AI copyright win, but will face trial over piracy claims. Creative Commons debuts CC Signals, a framework for an open AI ecosystem. How foreign scammers use U.S. banks to fleece Americans. Brand stewardship and visibility. Exclusive. Skims plan for global domination. Exclusive. The era of woke brand activism is over. Exclusive. Global tech politics. Exclusive. Big Balls is now at the Social Security Administration.